I'm going to solve your biggest struggle in Warhammer 40,000 today. I'm going to give you a new paradigm of how to think about the game, which is going to completely radically alter the way you perceive everything you thought you knew about winning Warhammer 40,000. So let's get into it. The game is all about victory points. Now, a lot of players, when they play Warhammer 40,000, they think that they win by killing units. I'm going to destroy your entire army. That means I'm going to win. This is not the way we win 40k. If that's the way you answer, if you answer, oh, well, I win by scoring secondaries or I win by scoring primary, you're wrong. The way that you win Warhammer 40,000 is by scoring one more victory point than your opponent. Of course, you could score 2, you could score 5, you could score 100 more victory points. No, I guess 90 more victory points than your opponent. But it doesn't matter as long as you score one more victory point than your opponent, unless, of course, you're playing teams. If you're playing teams, things can be a little bit different, of course. But one more victory point, okay? Picture yourself here, because I guarantee you've been in this situation where that you have completely tabled your opponent. You have destroyed every single model in their army, and you did it in turn 4. So you even had a full turn 5 to score more victory points, and you still end up losing the game 85 to 90. How does that work? Well, it works because your opponent played to score points, and you played to destroy your opponent. So you don't win by killing, you win by scoring. And today we're going to make sure that you will win by scoring, and that your opponents are going to end up in scenarios where they win even though they are tabled. From now on, all right, here we go. The victory point reality. Every single game is coming down to victory points. This game is divided up into 3 ways of scoring victory points. One is paint scores. You're effectively always going to have 10 points because we're assuming like a tournament experience. You're probably not even allowed to register for the tournament unless your army is painted. So you're going to get 10 victory points for that. Then you're going to get 50 victory points for primary, and you're going to get 40 victory points for secondary. This gives us a lot of immediate information about how we're going to approach the game. And trust me, we're going to lay this all out for you today, and you're going to be like, boo, light bulb moment. Hello. So primary and secondary points decide absolutely everything. You can kill lots of more units. You can table your opponent. You still lose, just like in the example we gave previously. So what the best players do in this game is they play for points, not for kills. And then you also need to understand that denying points to your opponent is every bit as powerful as scoring points yourself. It doesn't matter how you score these points. If we get you to, let's say, if you deny your opponent 20 points on a primary and you only score 10 points on primary, well, if your opponent only scored 5, you're going to win. It's just the way it's going to work. So you can deny your opponent to be able to create this victory point deficit, or you can score too many points that your opponent can't catch up. Either way, as long as you get more victory points, that's what it is. And we're going to talk about how focusing on primary is the way to do this. So let's go ahead and learn exactly what primary is, and then we're going to learn how to understand secondaries, and then we're going to learn how the two interact. Okay. Now, out of 100 victory points, 90 victory points are scored based off of primary and secondary. The 10, that's just paint scores, blah, blah, blah. You got it. So now you've got 2,000 points in your army, and your 2,000 points of your army need to figure out how to score you 90 victory points. One of the things that I like to immediately do in my head is I go, okay, cool. That means rough math, blah, 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 blah. Effectively, 100 points of your army needs to be scoring or denying your opponent 4.2 victory points. That's generally what the ratio that you want to be looking at. Now, this is just super, super loose because occasionally, like I'll have, or basically every single game, I'm going to have a 40-point unit of Gretchen that might end up scoring me, 20 victory points, which is like way more value for what the unit cost to actually score victory points. And I might have like my Gaz brick, which scores me 0 victory points. But my Gaz brick might end up denying my opponent 50 victory points, right? So this concept of scoring me 4.2 victory points, that's how I keep it in my head, just to keep things like rational, but there are, of course, wild exceptions to this. So let's talk about understanding the primary score right now. You're going to score primary every single command phase, starting in the second command phase, and unless it's like Purge the Foe, and it's a little bit weird. And you score 4 victory points turn 1 for killing an opponent's unit, for example. Anyway, usually you're going to be able to score up to 15 victory points for a round. This can change ever so slightly. For example, in round number 4 on Supply Drop, you can get up to 16 points of victory points. On Scorched Earth, you can only get 10 points per turn. So there are some exceptions, but just for the purposes of the math that we're going to do here, we're going to assume take and hold. So you can score up to 15 points on primary. This is also going to be true for Terraform and a couple other things as well. Primary is going to reward consistency and tempo control of the game, not your big freaking plays. So here's the deal. I'm going to score 10 victory points on primary every single turn. You're going to score 10 victory points on primary every single turn, because I'm going to hold my home field and I'm going to hold my natural expansion. If you don't know what a natural expansion is, what a natural expansion is where it logically makes sense for you to move your units next. So it's generally going to be your safe objective. Hey, it's the objective on your side of the battlefield that is slightly behind terrain, blah, blah, blah. You're going to call that your natural expansion. That's the one that's easiest for your side to hold. Your opponent will have one as well. So if you hold yours and you hold your natural and you hold your home field, you're going to get 10 victory points in this paradigm per battle round, and your opponent is also going to score 10 victory points per battle round, which would get you approximately a 40-point primary guaranteed. So winning on primary is all about positioning and patience. The thing that you don't want to have happen is you don't want to score 35 victory points while your opponent scores 40. So it's much better to go for consistency. Too many people think that in battle round number 2 that they have to max primary. I have to get 15 points in primary in battle round 2. So I'm going to put all of my units on all of the objectives, and then your opponent just kills a lot of your units and you still don't score primary. Big mistake. So what I'm going to do, now that we're understanding the way primary scoring works, I'm going to go through secondary scoring, and then I'm going to show you how they relate, and how actually scoring secondaries is going to screw you up. It's going to make you generally do significantly worse. So let's get into it. So how do we understand secondary scoring? All right, secondary scoring. This is your personal mission. You're going to choose very, very wisely. So you can score up to 40 victory points on secondaries. This is why I like to phrase secondaries as secondary and primary as primary. Keep your primaries primary and your secondaries secondary. Scoring and denying primaries is your number one goal in this game. Scoring and denying secondaries is your secondary goal in this game. If you think about it that way, you're going to be okay. So this is generally going to be like the tiebreaker between players who both know how to intelligently score their primary. So if you and I are both scoring 40 points on primary, whoever does better on secondary is going to be the winner. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to teach you how to make that a lot easier. But one of the big common mistakes that we see on secondaries is people who pick secondaries that kind of fight your primary plan. Like, let's say, for example, I have a army that really wants to be on objectives in my opponent's face. They might choose cleanse because like, hey, I'm going to be on those objectives anyway, so I might as well be doing actions on them. But don't you understand that your opponent's going to be charging you, and then you're going to be engaged in melee, and then like you're not going to be able to do an action because you're engaged in melee? It can kind of cause a lot of problems. Now, there's certain skew builds that can make that work, but it creates a big problem. And this is why the majority of the time you will see most players choosing tactical secondaries over fixed secondaries. In 10th edition, fixed secondaries just really don't work that well in the majority of scenarios. There are, of course, some exceptions to that. I can think of like certain spam style lists that can get through that. But anyway, stats basically show that as long as I deploy intelligently and you deploy intelligently, and we know how to score for secondaries, because remember, secondaries aren't exactly random. You can predict the secondaries that you can draw, which means you can position to score the secondaries you can score. So it's not 100% random like people they say they are. But if you're deployed intelligently and that you have your units positioned in places where that you can actually get to the secondaries that you potentially could score, you're basically going to score between 28 and 32 points on secondaries. Now, yes, you can have a bad draw for a game here. You can have a great draw for a game here where you can score a little bit better and a little bit lower. But you're pretty much always going to score anywhere between 32 and 28 victory points with a slight margin of error there. So what we want to do is we always want to make sure that we choose secondaries that our armies is going to want to score naturally, and most of the time that's going to be tactical. If you're a army and you have like 22 units because you're just like MSU out the wazoo, you might want to look into things like established locus, behind enemy lines. Things like this could be possible, but remember, it's going to give your opponent the ability to deny you your secondaries. That's a big problem. So denial, denial, denial. All right, now let's talk about how primaries and secondaries interact. This is the good stuff. This is the key to the entire video, so you need to make sure that you're paying attention right here. How do primaries and secondaries interact? Primary is primary, secondary is secondary. If I score 40 points on primary because I hold my natural and I hold my home field every single battle round, and you score 40 points on primary because you hold your primary, your natural and your expansion every single battle round, so we're both at a tie. We both have 40 points on primary. Well, we both know that the stats basically show that we're both going to score anywhere between 28 and 32 points on secondaries. So let's grant you that you are going to score the 32 points on secondaries, and I am going to score the 28 points on secondaries. Logically speaking, that means I score 40 on primary, you score 40 on primary, you get 32 on secondary, I get 28 on secondary. Okay, cool. You're going to end up winning the game by 4 points. Got it. Now, let me flip all this on its head. Let's say that I score 40 points on primary, but my game plan is to deny your natural expansion once. I'm not even trying to destroy your units. I'm not even trying to hold your natural expansion. You just have, turn 1, you put a rhino on your natural expansion for 2 OC, and then in my turn 1, I just move 2 scouts up, and I put 2 OC on your natural expansion, so now in your turn 2, you do not score your natural expansion. That means now you have scored a 35 35 on primary, and I've scored a 40 on primary over the course of the game, assuming you don't deny my secondary or my primary. This means that even if you score 32 on secondary and I score 28 on secondary, I'm going to win the game by 1 point. That's how powerful denying a primary is. That's how critical denying a primary is. So if I have successfully denied your primary once, you are now forced to either hope and pray that you get the draws on secondaries that will get you a much better secondary score than me, which is a poor plan, or it's going to force you to take a risk because now you have to do one of two things. One, you have to either deny my home field or my natural expansion by doing your own movement shenanigans or charging shenanigans, or you have to figure out how to hold the central objective without dying. This is very, very challenging because if you move into the center objective, I'm going to have an entire turn with my entire army to obliterate you so that you don't score that primary. Or if I don't want to obliterate you, maybe I just match your OC by putting another unit on the central objective as well. This is very, very bad for you because that means that you have to take a very big risk of exposing yourself in order to try to catch up on score, making the game much easier for me. This is why denying primary is so critical and key to this game. If you can figure out how to hold your natural and hold your home field and deny your opponent's natural one time, you've put your opponent in a really bad scenario where they are going to have to take some very serious risk to catch up on score. It's a awful scenario for your opponent to be in, and it is a glorious feeling to put them in that scenario. If you can deny your opponent's natural expansion twice, you're not quite, but you're super close to just being guaranteed the win. Because at that point, now you've got a 10-point win on primary, assuming you never take any risk and you never have to push into the middle or anything. That means that your opponent's gonna have to win by 11 secondary points to catch up, which is super incredibly hard to do. Very, very hard to do. That's a bad place for your opponent to be. So this comes to say that if you are playing to try to score lots of secondaries, you need to make sure that when you're scoring secondaries, you're not interfering with your ability to hold primary or to deny primary. What does this look like? Well, I know that I can have a unit. I only have one unit position. Let's say it's a unit of scouts. And I have drawn established locus. And I could keep this unit safe. And I could have them stand behind the central ruin and score me 2 points on established locus. Or I could advance those scouts onto my opponent's natural expansion, and I can deny them primary in their turn 2, or turn 3, or turn 4, or whatever. What's going to be a more effective value for my 70-point unit? Remember what I said earlier in the game. You effectively want every 100 points of your army to score you 4.2 victory points or deny your opponent 4.2 victory points. Now, if I have a 70-point unit of scouts that can either get me 2 victory points or I could deny my opponent 5 victory points, what's a better value? I'm taking the denying of the primary every single day. It doesn't matter that I don't get to score secondaries. Scoring secondaries is secondary to the primary game. If you focus on your primary game and you only really worry about scoring the secondaries when it's convenient to enacting your primary game, you are going to win so much more Warhammer than you ever did before. It's going to blow your freaking mind. It's going to blow your mind. Now, sometimes when you do have to focus on secondaries is when you fall behind on primaries. Now you got to start taking those risks. Now you got to hopefully survive the Overwatch so that you can deep strike behind enemy lines, get the established locus. Now you got to start taking risk with your units because you do have to catch up in points. But if you could put your opponent in the position where they have to take the risk, oh my goodness, your life is going to be so much easier. So here's the deal. I want you guys to practice scoring. I want you to stop trying to table your opponent. I want you to stop trying to score every single secondary you draw. And I want you to think about what happens if you put your opponent in this primary deficit. So I want you to run some test games focused only on scoring efficiency. You're going to track your primary, you're going to track your secondaries, and you're going to track your opponent's primary and secondaries. And you're going to learn what your army scores naturally. But I can almost promise you, the best way to look at it is, how do I guarantee that I have my natural expansion on lockdown? My opponent can't take it off of me. I have my home field on lockdown. My opponent can't take it off of me, unless it's a mission where you don't need to hold your primary, your home field, like supply drop, for example. And then if you focus on how do I deny my opponent one time, and remember, denying a primary is infinitely easier than scoring a primary. So much easier. Because all I have to do to deny your primary is I have to get more OC on it than you have in your command phase. But if I want to hold primary, I have to survive an entire turn of your army trying to destroy my models. Do you see what I'm saying? It's so much easier to deny than to score. Your opponent can have Mortarion sitting on an objective, like the Demon Primarch himself. I think he's like OC6 or whatever. And if I take a unit of 3 Outriders and I put them on the objective, you don't get primary. Notice I don't have to kill Mortarion. I don't have to do anything else. I just got to put 6 OC. I just got to match you. I don't even have to get more OC than you. I just have to match you. And if he's 5 OC, it is what it is. You at me in the comments. It's fine. Just understand the example I'm using here, okay? So he's sitting there, and I just match his OC. I've denied it. I'd have to kill him. I certainly don't have to survive the Death Guard army for an entire turn to score that primary, because that is so much harder than just denying. All I have to do is deny, and then that is 5 victory points your opponent can never earn back. So focus on the denying. All right, so just to recap, guys. Primary is primary. Keep primaries primary, because primary is what wins games. Score your primary, deny your primary, and then think about your secondaries, because secondaries is really how you kind of secure the game. If I know I'm getting my 40 on my primary, then I really want to just push the secondaries just a little bit, just to guarantee that my opponent isn't going to be able to get like the 6-point lead that he would have on secondaries to really break the differences there. Just that's what you do to secure the games, is your secondaries. But to win it initially, that's the primary. And then consistency is the entire thing. I don't care if you score 15 points in primary in turn 2. If you score 5 points for the rest of the game, that's not a good place to be. I'd much rather score 10 every single round, maybe make a little push at the end to try to get a 15 at the end, but look for consistency in scoring, not for flashing out there and burning hot and burning bright and making sure trying to score everything all in turn 2. If you try to win the game in round 1 or round 2, you're probably going to lose in rounds 4 and round 5. So I recommend trying to win in round 4 and 5 and being a cunning little git. So here's the deal, guys. We're going to change our mindsets. We're going to change our entire paradigm of how we're playing Warhammer. You don't need to crush your opponents. You need to outscore them. If you like this stuff, I got coaching services available down in the description below. You can go to my coffee and you can either just support me, or you can book coaching calls, or you can join the most informative and helpful community on Discord in the entire freaking world, and you can become a grot or a git for $5 a month. You can also join on YouTube, and you can get all these thoughts and a lot more. And that's it. So basically, hope you all have an amazing freaking day in games also. And crump on. Bye-bye.